Welcome to RDH Coast to Coast Break Time Power Chats for the Dental Hygienist. This podcast engages your professional growth one break at a time. Get ready for engaging discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips to boost your dental hygiene career, all packed into your well-deserved break. Tina will teach from the heart while Kim will help you bloom where you're planted. So grab your headphones, take a deep breath, and let's embark on this exciting journey together. It's time to power up your break time and elevate your dental hygiene career. Let's dive in. Kim, we're back.
We are, and we have an amazing topic and such an important topic to touch upon in this short amount of break time that you have. But we are diving into the importance behind the working interview and what it allows you to see before you say yes to your next job.
Oh, yeah. Like just saying working interview. Oh, gosh. Like,
Yeah.
Right. And I think the number one question that I hear, like, do I get paid for that? And the answer is like, yes.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Absolutely. And
yes.
not only do you get paid for your working interview, you don't get paid in gift cards. You don't get paid in a wad of cash. You establish a dollar amount beforehand. If there is paperwork that needs to be filled out, that paperwork is filled out and ready to go on the day that you show up for that working interview.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I'm so glad you said that. That is so important because I will say that in my hometown here in Salem, Oregon, there was a rumor. I don't know for a fact. There was a rumor that there was an office in the geographical area that is how they went through and filled their empty spots, as they just kept holding working interview after working interview after working interview, saying, oh, well, it's a working interview for like, a couple of days. And then they would try to get somebody else in. And they just kept calling them working interviews so that way they could keep and pay. They set it up where they'll pay you less and then decide. And so
right.
Be aware.
And it's good. I mean, I'll share a quick story. This wasn't even a working interview, but I had been working in an office, just helping them out like a half a day a week. And then I had to step away for a different position, but they were short staffed one day. And I went in, and I guess shame on me for assuming that I would still be on the payroll, but I did. And at the end of the day, the doctor just slipped cash into my lab coat. Once in a while, it happens, right? And we'll take the cash and call it a day. But the cash that I was paid was $9 less an hour than the dollar amount that I was getting paid when I was being paid through their payroll, which I guess, there's not taxes coming out, but it was a sticky situation and I really didn't know how to deal with it. And I just kind of let it ride and not confront the situation. Hindsight, I probably should have, because that was money that I was owed, nor was I told beforehand that I would want to be paid, that I would be paid in cash. So it's just, when you think you don't have to follow up on certain situations, it's always best to do it, because then you get stuck in, you play that mind game. Do I say something? Do I not say something? Do I let it go? And then after that, I made the decision that I wouldn't return to the office if they asked me for help.
And, and so get it in writing,
Mm-hmm.
do the paperwork, and talk the money, like upfront. Like those are the first things, right?
Yes.
Like, is this working interview just for a day? Are you wanting to do a working interview for a couple of days? Is it just for the half of the day? Like, what is the time frame for the working interview? And what is the cost? And where can I fill out the paperwork so that way I can be appropriately compensated? And your paperwork and taxes are correct with my paperwork and taxes. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That can be a challenge for some people to have that conversation.
Absolutely. And now let's kind of talk about what you want to look for when you're in there, especially, if you're newer in the field and you don't have that experience of working in a number of different offices, or you've been in the same practice for 25 years and now you're at a working interview. What's your top two, Tina, that you look for, would you say, in a working interview?
So I would try to be a casual observer and just see how does everybody communicate with each other, and does anybody even acknowledge my existence?
Exactly. And that's a big one is, does anybody acknowledge your existence? Because it can go both ways. You know, you can be isolated in a room and you don't see any of the staff for the entire time that you're there. Or are they popping in and saying, hey, we're so glad to have you here. Anything you need, I'm right around the corner. It's such a big difference.
And that would go true whether it is a working interview, if you're going in and you're subbing, temping, being a guest hygienist, whichever. I prefer the term guest hygienist.
Yes, I
But
love that.
when you go into that office, if nobody is acknowledging you, then you know that they don't have a functioning team,
Mhm.
right? They don't have protocols set up. It is each person for their own self, or they have people coming through so many times they're just completely exhausted. Like they're like, well, it's just another person coming through, they're gonna leave too.
Absolutely. And get a feel for how long that staff has been there. I think
Yes.
everybody, if you ever look up anything about working interviews, that's a big question, is what is the tenure of the staff? And is it, Sally in the room next door, it's her third month and Bob has been there for 2 weeks and Jane has been there for a month. That's a big sign. If the whole staff is not has not been there for a long time, what is that telling you about what's happening behind the scenes?
And if you don't know, and like say you're in a place where maybe you're the only hygienist, right? And you don't know what the history has been, I guarantee you your patients will know. They're gonna be like, another one. I
Absolutely.
never get the same person ever.
Yep. And
Or
that and they will say that.
they will say that. Or they may say, oh, what happened to Kim? She's been my hygienist for like the last 10 years. What happened? Then oh, okay. Like there was somebody here for a really long time.
Right, right.
And
And then how do you deal with that question if you're not used to it too? Is, oh, she retired and she's living her best retired life. I am so happy to step in for her, and I hope that I can provide you with the care that you have been used to for so many years.
exactly. And I'm excited to get to know this office and work with them and see how their philosophy and my philosophy can work together, right? Turn
Right.
it into a positive, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, take a walk around and see how what's happening in sterilization. Don't be afraid to ask questions, right?
Oh, girl, yes, sterilization. It is amazing, right? What you can learn about an office when you walk into the sterilization room.
Yep.
Like, is it clearly marked, clean and dirty?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
are there is there stuff set aside to keep the sterilization room safe for when you're in there sterilizing? Or is there just like a mishmash of stuff laying all around?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to ask those OSHA questions too. Are they testing their autoclave? Are they following the protocol? Because not everybody does.
Not
And
everybody does.
I don't want to, and I also don't think anything is perfect, but is it checking the majority of the boxes that need to be checked?
Yeah. And with that, not just the sterilization room, but just take a wander through the office, especially if maybe you might have some downtime,
Mhm.
is take your time as maybe you walk towards the restroom and try to listen how do the doctor and the assistant talk with each other,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Is the assistant stressed out to the max and have this moment of like kind of like the Stepford wife going, don't say anything wrong, don't do anything wrong, because maybe the doctor might have a short fuse? Or
I've
is
worked
it
in that office too.
right? Or do you hear them laughing and joking with each other and talking about like the latest murder podcast, right? The real
Right.
crimes podcast or something like
Right.
that, right?
Yes. And if I wanted to just say too, if you are waiting for your license, so say you just graduated and you aren't able to do a working interview, and I think we all know the market for jobs is so different than it was years and years ago when I graduated. go in and do an observation, and you won't get paid for the observation, but you can go in there and you can observe the hygienist as if you're working. You can have that dialogue back and forth. You can ask the questions about how long have they worked there. You can see how they're interacting with the doctor when they come in the room. Are they co-diagnosing together? Are they, do they have a good flow when they're handing the patient off to the doctor? Or are they expected to stand there in silence? Because I don't think I've worked in an office like that as well, where the doctor comes in and I wasn't allowed to speak. And that's not the kind of relationship I want with my co-provider, because that's really what we are.
Yeah. And I agree, Kim. I don't think I could handle that either. Where I'm like, okay, I just spent, 45 minutes to 50 minutes in this patient's mouth, evaluating everything. I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you, I might have some insights that you might want to listen to, right?
Exactly. And I want them to value what I bring to the table as well, because if they are coming in at the end of the appointment and everything looks great, as the doctor would say, well, let me tell you what we went through or what we discussed and what I saw and what our plan is moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And a good
Kim,
and a good doctor too will lay you up and say, "Oh, thank you," and echo what you say.
yeah, I agree. Or like, tell me what you learned today, right? I would
Yes.
say another thing that with a working interview or basic interview in general, right? What doesn't really matter is really take a look at the instruments. Like, how well have they been cared for? How are they packaged? Are they processed? Are they in a cassette? Do they sit in pouches? Hopefully it's a cassette. But and what's the quality? Are they all bent and broken? Or is there access to new instruments, and find out like who's in charge of ordering this stuff, right?
Right.
Is the
I just
cab
love
is
it. Yeah.
right? Is the ultrasonic, how out of date is it? And has it been used?
I just had a recent grad reach out to me. They took a new position. They have 3 instruments in their kits to work on a patient. I could never work with just 3 instruments. I think they had a sickle and like a posterior sickle and one other, maybe a universal.
Was it a pedo office? I mean,
No,
I can
it
see
was
that maybe in a
general.
pedo
It's
office.
general, absolutely, absolutely. But a general office, and they're wanting this to really ramp up their perio protocols. And we talked through I'm like, you need to have that conversation of I cannot provide the standard of care that I want to provide with the instruments that I am given. And
Right.
I think they
And
did end up agreeing to order more.
and being brave enough to say that, right? Saying, okay, well, if you want me to work here, I'm happy to, but these are the things that are of concern to me, and to be able to provide the best care, this is what I'm going to need. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I would say too, along those lines, is not just like being able to have the equipment and the instruments, is what kind of support do they have for you using your fullest scope of practice skill set, right?
Mhm.
Because I don't know, it's like different from state to state, but we're getting closer and closer to having a pretty unified scope of practice nationwide. And it'd be nice, right, to be able to go into that office and use all of your knowledge, being able
Absolutely.
to say, yes, patient, you do have periodontal disease. I have the capacity to diagnose this, and I will share that with you. Yes, patient, I can get you numb for this procedure because I am a high quality clinician, and that office will support you to be able to provide that care.
Yes, and I feel like this is probably a topic that we could talk about for hours. And I feel like we probably even just brushed the surface, but hopefully we made some points that will help you in your search for the best office for you. But don't be afraid to ask those questions before you get in there, because it will help you in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to say, Kim, right, I think that we can both agree that if anybody that's listening to this, if they have questions or comments and they want to know more hints and tips, they can reach out to either one of us, right? And
Absolutely. Anytime. I always say my email door is always open.
I may not answer it right away, but yes, yeah, I agree. Email door is always open. That's great. All right,
Yes.
Kim, thank you. Thanks for sharing that time with me.
Me too, as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this power-packed episode of our podcast, where Tina and Kim dove into yet another current topic shaping the dental hygiene world. We really hope this chat has given you some valuable insight and sparked some awesome ideas. Before we wrap up, we want to take a moment to express our gratitude to our amazing sponsors. Without your support, we would not be able to bring these meaningful discussions to our listeners. We appreciate your commitment to the dental hygiene community and the important work you do. We would also like to extend a big thank you to our listeners. Your continued support, engagement, and feedback fuel our passion for delivering you what matters. Remember, we are here for you. Please keep sharing your feedback, suggestions, and topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes, and have an awesome day.